we're going out to Texas either way. Gabe, him, wants to ask us some questions about how to have a conversation with some conservative parents, it sounds like. How are you, Gabe?
How are you? Hello?
Yeah. Hey, can you hear us?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, yeah, you were chatting it up with Rarity and Richard Gilliver. What do you want to talk about?
I have two conservative parents. They're actually from Mexico, and I feel like sometimes, Catholicism has fucked us over because there's, like, for example, topics that, even though my parents are doctors, they sometimes cling to religion, even when they're not supposed to cling to religion. And, I just wanted just some tips how I can speak to them about being atheist because, some of the literature that they read, they're very, they talk a lot really bad about the Catholic Church in Mexico. So I feel like they're on the fence from not being Catholic to being atheist. So, I don't know how I can speak to them about that.
Yeah.
When I said I was atheist myself, it was actually very brutal when I came out atheist. I had a lot of problems with them because of that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's a lot of us here that can relate to that. I'll give some quick thoughts and I'll pass it over to you, Richard. One thing that comes to my mind a lot whenever this kind of conversation is approached. I remember something that Dr. Darrell Ray said a long time ago, and it was like somebody had asked him kind of a similar thing, and his response was in the vein of like, well, what's your goal? Why do you want to have this conversation with the person? Because if at the end of the day, really where you're coming from is to try and force somebody to change their position or to try to, get the right tactic or the gotcha question or answer right to like win one over or something, that probably isn't the best motivation, right? From our parts as the ones that want to engage. And something Richard had said earlier in this show was about, let's be charitable to each other. Let's have these conversations calmly and listen to the other side and genuinely try and understand. And I think a lot of times we do end up making more progress that way. It may not always feel like it, and it may sometimes feel like this particular discussion was a complete and total waste of time because we talked about it for 40 minutes and then we went all the way back to the beginning, and oh my gosh, I think most of us have been in a conversation like that once or twice before. But I think there's great value in at least demonstrating to those other interlocutors that you really are interested in a conversation. You're not interested in trying to demonize the other person's views or just shut down the conversation or anything. You honestly want to know where they're coming from and think about it from the perspective of walking with them through this stuff, right? As opposed to saying, hey, here's a recipe, make the recipe, right? Anybody should be able to read and follow the recipe. Instead of doing that, we do it together and we say, okay, well, first step is we crack 2 eggs. Well, great. Let's grab the eggs. I crack one, you crack one. And that kind of collaborative process, I think, is something that, again, maybe doesn't always result in that answer of, hey, I no longer believe anymore, and now I'm all rational and skeptical about everything. Yay. But I think oftentimes what it does is it indicates that we're willing to have these conversations. And in those more difficult moments, we might be someone that person turns to and is comfortable enough to say, hey, I am having doubts about this. I am having questions about this. But yeah, Richard, what are your thoughts on this? Where do you kind of shake out?
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think I'm very interested, Gabe. Where are you at in your kind of, because you said you were a Catholic yourself, and where are you at in your kind of your journey? Are you at the have you kind of got over the angry atheist stage if you had one? and are these conversations important to have with your parents to you?
They are because, I feel like, some of the topics like my parents, they have, like for example, they don't talk to me about sex because they're very afraid of talking to me about that, and I feel that it has to do a lot with them being conservative Catholics. So
Okay.
I'm 32 years old, and they still never talk to me about sex, even though they're medical doctors themselves.
Yeah. So is it something that you want to kind of pursue these conversations then with them, and are they interested in having them? Is another thing, because obviously you don't want to just walk up to them and approach them and kind of sound like you're firing off at them every time you come into contact with them. Is it something that your parents are open to doing, having these conversations?
I'm not completely sure because even if I have that type of conversation, since they're both medical doctors, they kind of have like that kind of like the cold shoulder, like the chip on the shoulder, like, oh, you're not a doctor, so I understand these things more than you. They have that type of mentality sometimes.
Yeah, that can be difficult. Especially, I mean, Catholicism's a very ritualistic tradition as well, and I think that sometimes if someone does go into the medical profession or one of those professions from that, they kind of apply the kind of the standards of that strict medical training to that ritual and kind of conflate them sometimes. I think there's a danger of them doing that and conflating the kind of religious belief as with the medicine and with the science that they've learned, and as though that they're somehow one and the same thing. So do you have any other outlets for these kind of conversations? If you like having these conversations, and we're here, we like having these conversations. If you like having these conversations, do you have outlets where you can go other than your parents and speak to people? Or do you have non-religious friends you can speak to, or even friends from different religious traditions that you can have these conversations with?
Yes, I do. I do have other people that are atheists or they're closet atheists. Like I was, for example, a closet atheist. I never really believed in Catholicism, but just to please my parents, just to please everybody in society next to me, I just couldn't. There was no such thing as being atheist where I came from. Yeah. So I just played it along with it throughout most of my life until finally, when I went to college and I took an English course with this professor that was very, that would talk very, very bad about religion, specifically Christianity. That's when, he made me feel okay. Okay, you know what? It's actually very okay to be an atheist.
Yeah, that's good. And again, I think that alone is such a powerful thing that we often take for granted in a lot of different facets of life, right? Like if somebody came up to me tomorrow and was just like, hey, I want you to meet, a good friend of mine. This is Bill. I'd be like, oh, great. Hey, Bill, tell me about yourself. And he's like, oh, I don't collect stamps. I'd be like, oh, yeah, cool. Great, man. Awesome. Because it's normal. It's a normal thing, right? If Bill came up to me and said, hey, I'm a Christian, it'd be like, oh, cool. Because again, it feels normal to us. But there's still that hurdle to get over a lot of time with, non-belief, with atheism, with agnosticism, with these types of stances. And again, that's where I think the value of just being able to engage in these conversations where you can have this respectful pushback and this disagreement, but in a way that's clear that you're valuing the other interlocutor, right? Because that alone, I think, really helps to normalize it. It really helps to just show, hey, we're the same. We're just people, Like I wake up in the morning and put my pants on, one leg at a time, except for Saturdays when I hang them and then jump right into them. It's a thing. It's a ritual I do. It's a long story, but anyway, like, yeah, it's good to just show people, hey, we're normal people and we can just have these conversations and we don't have to hate each other at the end. But yeah, Richard, any other thoughts?
Like that.
Sorry, Gabe, go on.
No, I didn't have any more comments.
Okay.
Do you have a topic that I could probably speak to them about? Because I don't know if I should go through like slavery,
Yeah, Richard, do you have a thought on
slavery?
a topic or
speak to them about at the beginning?
I don't. Rather than a specific topic, I think we've got to be very careful that if someone's kind of in that place, not to kind of attack them, especially if it's someone you love and there's somebody who's a family or a friend. You don't want to go and have them feel like you're attacking them and having them feel like you're attacking their specific beliefs. And so I think the way I'd approach this is by either talking about religion as a whole, rather than Catholicism. No, not let's not speak about Catholicism. Let's talk about religion in general. Introduce Islam and Buddhism and Hinduism, and talk about religion in general, and ask for their opinions on other religions. So you're not
Okay,
attacking
because
them. You're asking for their opinion. You're asking for their insights on things. Yeah, Gabe, please respond.
I have seen them like talk bad about other religions, like Jehovah's Witnesses.
Mm.
So usually, I think that's a very good way to jump in and start talking about it. But I don't know how I can talk to them without talking bad about Catholicism.
Well, one thing
But
is
like I said too, they do read like literature that talks bad about Catholicism, like in Mexico and everything. Like really brutal too.
yeah, yeah. One thing I enjoy
Oh,
doing, and this is going along with kind of what Richard was saying, is I'm a big fan of comparing things between religions, right? Because whenever we're raised in a particular religious culture, right, or a particular ideology, oftentimes the things that are really fantastical and a bit absurd in our story, in our cultural history, well, they sound completely normal and natural, right? But then when we hear
right.
almost exactly word for word another story from a different culture, we can write it off so easily. We can say, well, of course we know that that didn't happen in India. Of course we know that that didn't happen in Russia. Of course we know this, but for some reason we take ours as being so much more invested in truth, and it's just because we've been accustomed to it. And so yeah, just saying like, hey, did you know about this religion or this cultural thing? Did you know about this supernatural claim or thing from history? Like, what do you think about that? Do you think that thing is true? There's lots of stories in Hinduism about all kinds of incredible things that blow the Bible out of the water, okay? Just bring up a few of those and just be like, "Do you really think there was some god like on a spaceship flying around above these people or stuff?" And then see what they say. And then when they say, "Well, no, I don't think that's real." You can go, "Oh, well, we've actually got corroboration from these other texts around the time." And they go, "Well, that doesn't mean it's true." And you go, that's a good point. It doesn't mean it's true just because other people wrote stuff down somewhere around then. I wonder if there's anything in Catholicism that could be similar to that, right? I
Okay.
love
Yeah,
I love that approach,
that's
Gabe.
very good.
Yeah, and
That's
on
very
a
good to
similar
write that
vein, you
down.
can on a similar vein, you can introduce skepticism again
Mhm.
without directly attacking the religion.
Right.
Speak
Okay.
about skepticism, especially if from a scientific background, because they're already going to be familiar with the methodology of kind of the skeptic process, and try and get a way for them to apply that they already do, that methodology they already have, to religion, rather than keeping it separate. Because a lot of time what we find with religious people who are scientists is that they conflate the methodology and the evidence with opinion. And you'll hear this all the time. If you speak to religious people yourself, probably hear it yourself, where you get people saying, yes, but this scientist is also a Christian.
Mhm.
So, and it's almost like there's a conflation going off, that because they're a scientist and they're a Christian, that therefore there is evidence for Christianity. And I think if you kind of apply skepticism again without attacking the religion while you're doing so, you can kind of get those cogs going round in the brain, so they don't associate the methodology of the science with evidence for the belief just because they believe. And these are all good little kind of uh, methods you can use just to try and get the conversation going. Again, you don't have to be there trying to convince them of anything. Just get them thinking. Let them do the thinking for themselves.
Right.
Okay.
That's
Because I told
huge.
my dad he's like a really big fan of Carl Sagan. He has like all his videos. Like he had like a show, I think, and like he has all these videos. So a way I wanted to attack him is, what does he believe in? Why does he believe that, not yours? But that sounded a little bit more brutal than your method. But I like your method.
Yeah, I mean, if if your dad's a fan of Carl Sagan and is not already read the book, get him to read The Demon Haunted World, because that's a fantastic book about skepticism. And again, it's something that doesn't directly go out and attack religion. It's something that talks about the methodology and critical thinking, and it's a really, really good book to kind of get someone who's maybe new to skepticism as an idea to apply to themselves.
Yeah. And I think
what's the name of the book? Demon Haunted World.
A Demon Haunted World by Carl Sagan. And if he's a fan of Carl Sagan, and I'm sure he'll be really happy to read it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yes, he will.
And I think a lot of the things Richard has been bringing up is really, really valuable, because we do as people sometimes get our guards up, whenever somebody comes back. And like when I say fries instead of chips, I can't have a conversation with Richard because he just won't listen to anything that I say afterwards. But, doing that approach where you kind of, take a step back or maybe 2 steps back and you look at it from a broader perspective can be really, really helpful for people, because it just doesn't raise those guards as much, because it doesn't feel like the other person is coming at you and saying what you believe is dumb and blah blah. And that's not a good method. It's not a good way for us to actually dialogue with each other. And it's a skill too, so don't beat yourself up about it, Gabe. It's not something that you just wake up tomorrow and you're just fantastic at having these difficult types of conversations, especially with close relatives or loved ones, right? Those are always the people that it's really hard, because there is that emotional connection there. But I think oftentimes if we come at it from that perspective of letting people know, like, hey, like I care about you, and I want to honestly engage in this conversation. David McCraney, I think, recently finished up his book about like how to have difficult conversations or change minds or something. David McCraney is a very interesting guy that has a lot of incredible stuff out there. Go look him up. I'm sure he has some stuff on how to have these kinds of hard conversations. So, but yeah, hopefully
David
McCraney, like MC and then Crane with a Y. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right. CRANE.
Okay.
But yeah, go check that out, Gabe. And honestly, I mean, give us a call back in the future and let us know how the talk went and so forth. We'd love to hear that. So maybe you find out something that can be helpful for other people.
Very, very helpful.
Sweet. Well, sweet, Gabe. Well, we appreciate you, and we will let you go. And again, yeah, touch base with us in the future and say, how it went, and let us know if there's some pitfalls to avoid or some really helpful things we can shout out to the rest of the people out there with us.